Alright, Diablo 4 players, let's go over a Frozen Orb build for Season 10, as Frozen Orb is definitely a fan favorite in the Diablo franchise, one of the coolest builds in Diablo 2, but how does it do in Season 10? Well, it's actually quite good. Any core skill can pretty much do Pit 100 as long as you are trying to put a decent amount of time into it. You will require the Mythics if you do want to push into the Pit 100 pluses, but for the most part, this is going to be what I would consider more of a fun build than a top tier meta build, but I mean, it is definitely capable of clearing Pit 100 if you do happen to roll everything pretty much near the top tier. So for starters, there is going to be a Mythic version and a non-Mythic version of the build, and one of the main buffs that we're getting in Season 10 is Fractured Winterglass no longer needs to roll as an amulet. We can now have it as a Chaos Unique, and when you do have it there, you have a 100% chance when it does proc on that lucky hit of the conjurations to actually summon that Frozen Orb. So that is kind of the bigger buff that we're getting for the build. So as far as the skills go, we're going to be running Ice Blades. We are also going to be running Familiar over here and Lightning Spear. This all has to do with activating the conjurations that are on our active skill bar. If you do want to play some of the other things like the Hydra and stuff, you can feel free to go ahead and do so, but the more that you add that is non-cold based, you do lose out on some damage. But the reason why I decided to put in Lightning Spear is it does add a stun, as well as apply our vulnerability, which is pretty good, but you can technically also apply it with Frozen Orb if you want to, but it does give us some buffs, and the reason why we actually do play Lightning Spear is we will overcap on the amount of the familiars as well as Ice Blades if we do not play it. So for starters, as far as the skills go, that's why Ice Blades is here, as well as the familiar and Lightning Spear, but we don't push the buttons. All we do is pretty much pop Frozen Orb. If you want to activate Frost Nova to freeze the enemies in place, because how Frozen Orb works is you want to pop it directly on top of the enemy, and the reason why is because that is where its big DPS takes place. If you play on a controller, you don't even need to worry about it. It automatically does it perfectly for you. So this is a build where technically on a controller, you get a big advantage. But all you really do is pop your Frozen Orb again and again and again. And then again, with Frost Nova, you can activate this to gain 100% mana, but I already made the build automatically cast it because it's one of our enchants. And then we also play Teleport because we need a defensive skill to activate one of our bonuses, Tactician, but you can also use Frost Nova for this. But our enchantments are going to be Frost Nova and of course Frozen Orb, which is going to have a chance where it's going to shoot out a Frozen Orb to the enemy. And I believe you get like 39% chance to shoot out the Frozen Orb when you have like the correct things on the Paragon board. This number gets increased. But as far as the gear goes, we play the Air of Perdition, but on the non-mythic, we play the Lochran's Talisman to reach that crit threshold. And then we run Fractured Winterglass. Now keep in mind, the Chaos Uniques, you can put them anywhere. It doesn't have to be the chest piece. It could be boots or whatever. But yeah, you play Fractured Winterglass, and then you also play the aspect of the Shredding Blades over here. And the most important things on the gloves is your ranks to Frozen Orb. You definitely want to get this, as this is going to be a huge boost to DPS in Season 10. And then we want to run Crown of Lucian, because this just gives us extra damage. It does kind of double dip into the Banished Lord's Talisman. I was also trying out Frozen with the Shatter aspects, as well as running the Shatter key passive. However, it was just better to actually run Crown of Lucian, Banished Lords, as well as running Frozen Memories. So there is kind of a downside to proccing Banished Lord's Talisman when you run the aspect of Frozen Memories, because it makes your resource cost is lower, and you actually want it higher because you want to activate that Banished Lord's ability to get that overpower damage. However, the core skills is the most important thing at the end of the day. The reason why is that if you don't play one of the passives we're going to talk about it later, the DPS actually lowers quite a bit on the bosses, and that's the big area where Shatter is really good, but then when you get to the boss, if you don't get a lucky boss spawn and it doesn't spawn ads, then you're kind of out of luck and you literally cannot complete the rift. That's how the rank 1s used to be for many seasons with the Sorceress. It was just kind of RNG. So if you want to play it, we'll talk about this later. It can work, but it's big RNG, and for the quality of life, I don't think it's worth it for most builds. Now, as far as what we're doing, we're running a two-handed, and what we're doing over here is we're running that chance for Frozen Orb projectiles to cast twice. That is ideal. The reason why is because that number is so important on the Frozen Orbit, because it makes it so it does increase damage and explodes an additional time, so you get double explosions with it, so it's really good. And then we play Frozen Memories over here, so the Avalanche key passive now reduces the cost by additional 30%, so it's like 90%, because it already gives you 60%. And then its damage got buffed last season, so that's why we play this. It's just simply really good. And then we can also run Accelerating Aspect over here, or you can play Inner Calm if you want to do bigger boss DPS, and then Starless Skies just because it's in every single build, and it is excellent. And then for our runes, we run Seer and Vex, and then we also run Ahu and Ohm. So as far as the Chaos perks, of course, it's Mana Shield, and then we run Power Siphon, Advanced Techniques. This is on every single Sorc build. And then we also play Mana Infused Conjurations. This is another brand new buff in Season 10, where Ice Blades actually burst, so now you have a bigger AoE on Lucky Hit. Spawning the Ball Lightning doesn't really matter, but the Familiar leaving a damaging ground after its attack probably doesn't matter too much either, but the benefit is that Ice Blades is now an AoE, so then again, your proc chances of the Fractured Winterglass, where it's the Lucky Hit, the Conjurations, you have basically more Lucky Hit chance because you're hitting more enemies, so that's kind of why you see so many Frozen Orbs coming around, especially if there is like a bunch of enemies grouped up together. That would be really good for that. So if you really wanted to, you can maybe throw in like the Vortex. You can see this is a Pit 90 that I did relatively comfortably without like perfect pieces of gear. The glyphs in the gameplay are not at 100 yet, but again, if you want to play the other version, I'll show you guys gameplay of the other version. I felt like the other version was a lot worse, which we'll talk about in a second. But as far as the gems go, we were playing Emerald and Topaz and then Skulls everywhere. So for the non-mythic variant, you would then play Lockhorn's Talisman, and then you could just run Aspect of Inner Calm, or you could play Edge Master. It doesn't really matter too much, but it's exactly the same for the rest of the stuff. So the main thing I want to focus in on is the two variants. I actually tried out both variants. So there's one variant where you can play Avalanche, where again, you get 30% less mana cost, and then additional 30 is in the amulet. I like this version a lot better. If you want to play the Shatter version of it, it is possible. It's not that big of a swap. You literally just swap that and then you put anything else that is offensive on the amulet. But as far as this goes, I like Avalanche a lot more because the damage is way more consistent than requiring the enemy to be frozen and then you activate it. Also, again, it really sucks versus bosses if you play Shatter and you don't get a boss that spawns ads. They're both great like options, just that Shatter is going to feel a little bit more inconsistent. So I recommend Avalanche, but again, play what you want to. Those are like the two different variants that you could play. But as far as it goes, the first 2 points don't really matter because we don't really play the skill, but you might as well throw in a Frost one because you can put it on your bar and it gives you damage with a passive. Then we play Frozen Orb here, so you can make the enemies vulnerable to have a consistent source of vulnerability, or you can apply this explosion to generate mana. If you're having mana issues, you can run this, but you won't have any mana issues with this build for the most part because we're automatically going to have these Frost Novas activate. We can manually push them as well, but it basically just restores 100% of our mana. This thing was supposed to be nerfed, but it just really didn't get nerfed. The reason why is everything else that restores percent mana in Season 10 got nerfed, and this one just slipped by, so it's really good. The reason why it's 100% of your mana, and well, your mana is now your HP, and then if you just have these Frost Novas activating, it basically gives you immortality. I like playing Teleport, but if you don't want to, it's not that big of a deal. And then we put points in Ice Blades to get extra attack speed, and then Lightning Spear gives us the stun, as well as we have to put this point in over there. It can also activate vulnerability. We play the Familiar that gives us extra bonus damage. This is just free damage while we are healthy. And then we have Snap Freeze to instantly freeze, which kind of helps out. And then we just play all these over here. You probably don't need this one, to be honest. You could probably drop this one if you want to, but there's not really anything else that you could put into. If you want to play Deep Freeze and activate it once in a while for a damage boost and be immune to CC, that's fine too. If you are doing like 100 plus in Pit, you're probably going to be wanting this, but I just felt like it was clunky and unnecessary. And then we play Elemental Synergies. That's why having a lot of Frost skills equals more damage, and then cooldown reduction so you can activate more teleports, but that's the only thing we really use. And then Avalanche 100% is what I would recommend, but you can play Shatter and get away with it. Again, it just sucks for the bosses. And then as far as the Paragon board, the first one that we put in is Destruction, and then we move over to Frigid Fate with Eliminator. And then we go into Icefall with Exploit over here. And then we can go into Fundamental Release with Tactician. And then we go into Enchantment Master with Unleash. So this increases our enchantments by X30. So basically, again, our chances to get an additional Frozen Orb are, I believe it's 39% chance to shoot out an additional Frozen Orb, which is really awesome. That's why we play that as an enchant. The last few points, you don't actually need to max out your Paragon to pretty much max out the entire build. The rest of the stuff, just throw it into int. The reason why is we do not need like resistances and HP in the build, as well, for one, it's an int based build, and then on top of that you play Mana Shield, so getting all of like the bonuses over here where it gives you maximum life that you would normally take. You do not need it in the build. But like I said, it's more of a fun build than anything. But yeah, you could do pit 100 with it if your gear is like tippity top. But as far as it goes, is it going to be beating Hydra? I do not think so. And the simple reason is that Hydra just scales much better. Or even Ball Lightning, I would say, or even Ice Shards is going to be better than this. The reason why Ice Shards is like really top tier, as far as like the best cold variant build, right now I would still say it is Ice Shards, and the reason why is Ice Shards has the item Hail of Vertiglass, which can give you like 16 ranks to Ice Shards, which is impossible to beat. If you want to play hybrid and run Ice Shards and Frozen Orb, you can also kind of mix and match, and that way you can play like a complete Frozen build, and you can dominate T4. But if you really want to try to push pit 100, my recommendation would just be to funnel in all into one skill. But yeah, there it is, guys. Frozen Orb Season 10. Again, it's just kind of a fan favorite, and I always like to check it out to see if it's like more viable. But yeah, you still need to play the Fractured Winterglass, but at least now you don't have to roll it on an amulet. Again, rolling it in your chest, or it'd be chest, pants, boots, would be the correct areas. The reason why you don't want it in gloves is because you want to get ranks to Frozen Orbs in your gloves, which is a huge DPS benefit. But anyways, that's going to wrap up the build. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn that bell if you guys want to see more updates to either this build in the future, if we get any other updates, because I love Frozen Orb. It's my favorite skill in Diablo franchise on the Sorc for sure. Teleport and Frozen Orb are just like hand in hand. Anyways, take care, gamers, and I'll see you in the next video. And the build planner will be in the pin as well as in the link in the bio if you guys want to check it out.